Once, a Soviet B-59 submarine lurked just a few miles off the coast of America in the Caribbean Sea, ready to strike. The US Navy discovered its presence and tried to force it to surface by dropping small bombs into the water above it. The Soviet submarine had lost contact with its headquarters, which was thousands of miles away. The captain feared that war had begun and considered firing the loaded nuclear torpedo missile. During a time when tensions between the Soviet Union and the USA were at their highest, and both countries had thousands of nuclear missiles ready to launch at the push of a button, the captain of the Soviet submarine was on the verge of pressing the nuclear missile button. However, something unexpectedly occurred that prevented a major disaster and saved the world. Welcome to another intriguing video from the Golden Mindset. Hey folks, let's talk about a crucial moment in those 12 days when the Cold War between the USA and the USSR was escalating. This happened right after the bombing of Nagasaki in World War II, revealing the world to the aftermath and the formidable side of America. The Soviet Union emerged as the only nation capable of standing up against the US, being the second country to successfully acquire nuclear technology after World War II. Back in the midst of the Cold War between the USA and the USSR, things got intense. Both nations conducted numerous nuclear tests, making it clear that they wouldn't stay silent if attacked, unlike Japan during World War II. In this tense atmosphere, both countries had their nuclear weapons poised for action, whether the threat came from land, air, or sea. It was widely known that if one initiated a nuclear attack, the other would retaliate with a nuclear missile, leading to a catastrophe far worse than what Japan experienced. It was believed that 70% of the world's population could perish if such a war unfolded. To heighten the tension, American and Soviet bomber aircraft were constantly airborne, and their nuclear submarines lurked in international waters, waiting for that crucial go-ahead signal. Additionally, America placed its nuclear weapons in Turkey and Italy. These two countries were NATO allies and situated close to the Soviet border. This move bolstered America's position significantly, as it made it easier to launch attacks on the western part of the Soviet Union from Turkey or Italy. Upon learning this news, the Soviet Union made a strategic decision to station their nuclear weapons near America. The chosen location, just 200 kilometers southeast of the USA, was the island of Cuba. During that period, Cuba had a government aligned with communism, which didn't sit well with America. Cuba was considered an ally of the Soviet Union, given the ideological link between Cuba and the Soviet Union, as both were associated with communism. Communism entails that the government oversees all businesses, ensuring everyone receives an equal share. This eliminates the distinction between rich and poor classes in society. On the other hand, America favored the capitalist system, promoting a free market where anyone could engage in business and generate profits according to their endeavors. America aimed to bring capitalism to Cuba and considered attacking the island. However, Cuban President Fidel Castro, backed by the Soviet Union, received both support and weaponry from them. Behind the scenes, the Soviet president at the time, Nikita Khrushchev, struck a secret agreement with Fidel Castro. The deal involved the installation of intercontinental ballistic missiles (ICBMs) in Cuba by the Soviet Union, providing protection to Cuba against any potential American attack. This arrangement had the added advantage of allowing nuclear warheads to reach the South American region easily. The installation of Soviet ICBMs in Cuba started discreetly, but rumors began circulating throughout America, causing fear among the population that Soviet nuclear missiles were positioned just 200 kilometers from Florida. The White House dismissed all these reports as mere rumors during the 1962 state election campaign. However, to ascertain the truth, the U-2 spy plane of the USA was dispatched to fly over Cuba. The spy plane captured aerial images of Cuba, revealing the unmistakable presence of medium-range R-12 and intermediate-range R-14 ballistic missile facilities. These images made it evident that the Soviet Union had intensified its influence in the southeastern part of America. This revelation had a profound impact on American President John F. Kennedy. Fueled by existing anger towards Cuba, the Americans opted to launch airstrikes in Cuba. The strategy involved destroying the Soviet ICBMs through airstrikes and subsequently capturing Cuba with full force, a plan that had been overdue for quite some time. The American president's plan seemed like an invitation to World War III, as attacking Soviet missiles could be seen as an assault on the Soviet Union. Such an event could trigger a nuclear war from both sides, spiraling beyond anyone's control. Meanwhile, when the Soviet Union got wind of America's plan, they began preparations for a counterattack. As part of their strategy, the B-59 submarine, mentioned earlier in this video, was deployed to remain stationary in the deep waters of the Caribbean Sea near Cuba. This submarine had explicit orders to launch the nuclear torpedo missile in the event of war, without awaiting instructions from Moscow. The sub submerged to significant depths to evade detection by the US Navy, ultimately losing radio contact with Moscow. Concurrently, the US Navy grew suspicious of the presence of the Soviet sub in Caribbean waters, and initiated a series of bombings in the water to force the sub to surface and reveal itself. The bombs dropped by the US Navy were, in fact, signaling depth charges, an anti-submarine weapon capable of causing significant damage to a submarine if detonated nearby. The captain of the Soviet submarine, having already lost contact with Moscow, interpreted the bombardment as a sign that war had commenced and believed it was time to initiate the launch of the nuclear torpedo missile. While they possessed the authority to launch the nuclear weapon, the protocol dictated that all 3 officers aboard the submarine had to concur for the launch. 2 of the officers were in favor of firing the nuclear torpedo, but 1 officer remained unconvinced and hesitant to launch the missile. The executive officer, Vasily Arkhipov, who held the second-in-command position on B-59, decided to go against the majority opinion. A heated argument ensued among the 3 officers. Arkhipov believed that launching the nuclear missile was too risky without confirmation of the war's initiation. The debate continued for a few minutes, and eventually, a decision was made to bring the B-59 up to the surface and establish contact with Moscow first to accurately assess the situation. Simultaneously, while all this unfolded on the B-59, the presidents of both countries were engaged in a meeting to de-escalate the situation. During the meeting between the Russian and American presidents, a decision was reached. Russia would retract its missiles from Cuba under the condition that America refrained from attacking and capturing Cuba thereafter. This deal was presented to the world and the public. It was later revealed that America had quietly agreed to remove its missiles from Turkey and Italy as part of the resolution. This 12-day crisis is globally known as the Cuban Missile Crisis. The tension during these 12 days had escalated to the point where both countries had deployed their nuclear missiles into space. This precautionary measure was taken to ensure that if the war did not commence, the missiles would be neutralized in space. In the event that no intervention occurred, the missiles would automatically target their intended destinations. As the crisis concluded, the missiles were ultimately neutralized in space. Meanwhile, when B-59 surfaced and established radio contact with Moscow, they received instructions to return to the Soviet Union. Historians believe that the decision made by Executive Officer Vasily Arkhipov on that date is a pivotal moment that saved us all. Without his intervention, the intensity of a nuclear war could have been catastrophic, potentially leading to the end of the human race. What are your thoughts on this? Feel free to share your comments below. Drop a like if you found this video engaging and insightful. It won't cost you anything, but it motivates our team to keep making top quality videos for you guys every week. Until next time, foster and embrace a golden mindset.